Alright, I think I'm recording. Looks like it. Alright, so comments, maybe. It might be a lot of this. A lot to comment on. So, whatever, I don't know, I guess it's the cowboy. I don't know who the troll is who has to keep talking shit. But this was a comment he previously made that I actually did read before, but I just wanted to get to this, the point that needs to be raised. I really want people to challenge my theory, and I've posted videos for that exact purpose. They're in the category called subjects, okay, as a playlist. And I want somebody to tell me why something said in those videos can't be true. That's all. They're explanations of how my theory works and how it explains what we see in experiments. And I want the explanation of how there's an inconsistency. These stupid side arguments, and they are defenses of mainstream. So again, I'll read the comment. I'm not a Tesla fan or a defender of mainstream. Yeah, you are a defender of mainstream. That's all I see you doing in these comments, is defending some mainstream notion that I've challenged. So save your breath. Fuck you. You still have not figured that out. Again, there's no way to figure it out because I don't even know who I'm talking to. When somebody challenges your theory, again, you're not challenging my theory. You're doing this obnoxious, I got you with some dopey semantics argument. You argued about the difference between ions and isotopes for 20 minutes. So what? How does that have anything to do with the theory? I don't even worry about ions and isotopes in most of the theory, in the sense that I'm sort of pointing out that what they call an ion, doesn't necessarily have to be something with an extra electron or less electrons. It has to do with the electrons, being in a different orbit. But whatever. Your response that mainstream does so and so is not a defense. Sure it is. That's the only thing I'm challenging, is they have a silly notion of reality that's wrong, and I have a simpler mechanism, a simpler theory, a simpler model that works and explains the evidence. And that's all that needs to be argued here. The mainstream has a lot of crap, but that doesn't validate your theory. Well, it does if mine's not as crappy. That's all there is here. There's no other argument. I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's any contest here from an honest observer's perspective. So it's only status quo people defending status quo because they're used to it. So it's just a bad old idea. It's like incumbency in politics. It's the evil you're used to, and so it's hard to get rid of that and challenge it with something new. And that's the only bigotry that's stopping. If this was, like I said, if it was a fair trial, I win. Anyway. Alright, so he did post a link to, this, on the newer comments. We continue our hilarity. So again, there's all this unnecessary crap. You can't get to the point. Again, and there's no hypocrisy on my part in demanding that you get to the point, in the sense I never comment like this on somebody's video. If they say something I disagree with, I point out my disagreement. I get to the subject. I don't waste my time with this nonsense. I'm going to provoke a fight. And that's all you're saying. You want to keep fighting. I don't have any interest in it, asshole. I have an interest in arguments that are rationally presented and civilly presented. Can't you ever do that? Could you just try it one time? Anyway. Noticing how you have subtly backtracked from your previous video claiming which way had to do with entanglement. I haven't subtly backtracked. It was a simple argument I was making. I don't use I just saying, to Holiday, I don't use the words which way, because people use those for all kinds of entanglement experiments, deciding which way based on which crystal produced, which side of the crystal produced the photon. All kinds of entanglement experiments, and the one Piero just mentioned. Oh, damn it. It has to do with polarization also. Oh shit, I'm not going to remember the term. Well, anyway, Piero just said in a video where he's talking to Holiday, and he says, "Well, I sent you the clip of the blah blah experiment," and it's another, it's not doing anything that doesn't have anything to do with which way again. It has to do with polarized light. It's a whole different subject. So I'm just saying, so that was my only point, is that calling the controversy the which way controversy, it sounds logical, but the words which way don't mean detecting electrons or detecting photons anymore. And I haven't backtracked from that at all. Alright. Not slit passage identification. So I'm just saying, just listen to Piro's video where he explicitly says, well, I sent you the, what the hell is it called? It'll come to me eventually, I think. But anyway, and it's not a which way experiment. Of course, longtime viewers of your antics and more bullshit are not surprised by this duplicity. Again, it's just a lie, okay? There's no duplicity. I haven't deleted any of my videos. What I said is clear. I'm merely complaining that calling it which way is confusing because there are too many different kinds of experiments that are falling under that category now. That's all I said, jackass. And then your own link is just another example, because even though it's a which way, called a which way experiment, it has nothing to do with detecting the electrons. Nor by your belligerent ignorance, some more nonsense to use your own phrase, but the egg stains on your face are still fun to watch. So again, what egg stains? I'm clearly saying you're wrong if you think I backtracked from anything, because I didn't. I still wouldn't use which way. Besides the fact that it sounds faggoty, it's not an explicit enough terminology, because too many things fall into the category. As pointed out, your own link, not a which way. Piro's subject, not the subject. And again, all of the other kinds of entanglement experiments that don't have anything to do which way. So yeah, quantum eraser. Okay, so Pyro links to a quantum eraser. He says, didn't I send you the quantum eraser experiment? Now, do you think a quantum eraser experiment is a which way experiment? It's detecting electrons, which slit it went through? No, it's not doing that. Oh, anyway. And who can forget the belly laugh-induced videos of you ranting against irrational numbers and transcendental numbers? Again, I don't know where this video ranting against them was. Obviously, I can make a comment about how the fact that I frankly don't have much stock in a pile of this abstract mathematics, because I never even see anybody solve it to a real conclusion, ever. They just take one equation they start with and they end up with another equation at the end, and they never put a number in the equations. I don't even know, I've never seen them successfully actually use it to come up with a number. But anyway, claiming there is no such thing. I don't care whether there is or isn't. I don't think it's useful. An imbecile is sad to watch. Well, fuck you. But a belligerent, arrogant imbecile is in a class all by himself, and that would be Piro. And that would be you. So again, what good does this shit do? Again, if I wasted my time saying this kind of crap on somebody else's video, then this might mean something. That you're saying, well, we all have to have equal time, just wasting each other's time saying crap that's useless. But fuck you. That's all I can say to it. I've never personally insulted you. I have a right to personally insult the Catholic Church or some other thing. Now, if you get butthurt because of that, well, that's your problem. But you have no right to make it personal, asshole. You can make counter-arguments how it has integrity or it has something, but all this personal shit, you have no business doing that when you don't put your face, you put no integrity behind what you say. You're just some anonymous coward who can't just man up and say this shit to me face to face. It's disgusting. Fuck you. Especially when he makes a public spectacle. Man, whatever. Yeah, no content in this mush. Coming to the matter at hand. Oh, finally? Here is one which way experiment for electrons done back in 2011. So I'll read this. He's even aware of the fact that it's such crap that he has to write this extra bit here. Note that the question here is not whether mainstream interpretation of the explanation is correct. Yeah, so well, the point is okay, maybe their whole theory doesn't make any sense, but it's still a which way experiment. Well, I don't know how it can really be a which way experiment if their theory of what's happening doesn't make any sense, but okay, fine. But whether the experiment was performed and what empirical results were obtained. Well, again, so you think there are empirical results. First, there's no results. There's nothing in the paper that shows a single result anywhere. So you don't even have that information. So obviously that's an open question. So until somebody gets the actual paper and not, you want to pay the $30 for this piece of shit? I'm not paying $30 for it. So maybe somebody can find the free version somewhere. Contrary to your belligerent ignorance, so again, I'm not the one belligerently ignorant. You're talking out of your ass. You haven't even seen how they did the experiment. These experiments have been performed. Well, again, you said 2011. Feynman was talking in 1960. Then he was talking in 1980. All these people have been saying this shit long before 2011. Contrary to your belligerent ignorance, these experiments have been performed by real scientists as opposed to you and your cadre of smucks. Well, so again, that's the best you can do. So some experiment that they keep talking about, and I've heard them be talking about it for at least 10 years, and I've seen them talking about it back in the 60s. So all this time they've been talking about experiments, and you're saying, and it's fundamental experiment. I mean, this is a fundamental to their whole theory. And nobody can find them, and you're calling me the smuck? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. And you're saying this isn't a defense of their smuckery? You're saying I'm not defending conventional physics. How does this prove my theory wrong in any way whatsoever? I'm just merely pointing out that they have proposed their theory. They're selling their theory with experiments they didn't actually do. And that should be a credibility issue. If I made claims that I did experiments on my porch and I never did them, that would be a credibility issue you could hang me on. Legitimately. So this is just such bullshit. Alright, so this one. Also, your confusion between ions and isotopes. Yeah, in one video, in one conversation, I started thinking in terms of ions instead of isotopes. I made a mistake, and it was clear I made a mistake. So what? It was not a typo. Well, it was a typo. I do understand the difference, asshole. But an entire 20-minute tirade. There wasn't any tirade. I was just pointing out, me and Franklin were arguing about the consequence, and the fact that I was using the wrong word didn't mean anything really to the subject, because the subject still was about charge, you idiot. On the John Chappelle Saturday chat. Is there some other thing that changes by being an isotope or being an ion besides the fact that the thing has a different charge potential because of it, you jackass? No. A 20-minute argument. The argument was about a different subject. So there wasn't a 20-minute argument about ions and isotopes. That argument lasted about 3 minutes. He told me, well, you're talking about ions, isotopes are completely different. And I was like, I realized I'd made a mistake. Where you kept digging yourself deeper and deeper. There's none of this happened. So this is just a waste of time. I mean, it's just silly. So whatever. Please keep doing your videos coming. The world needs more laughter. Yeah, the thing that's not a joke is the fact you think you people are so pathetic. I have, like I said, I have open invitation. You can't get one person that has any set of testicles whatsoever, that they're all afraid to make an argument in a public room, even with just your mic. I mean, I'm not even asking you to have a video camera. So all you have to do is be able to muster, have the capacity to make an argument, and some kind of sensible one. What a pile of bullshit. So yeah, I'm going to just continue to delete your comments. If you have to premise your comments with lies, then you're not going to post here. Fuck this. I have no obligation to accept liars. Piro keeps lying. Frankly, people, I'm going to start blocking people who post anything positive on Piro's videos. So if you have anything civil to say to Piro on his videos, then I'm probably going to block you, because he's just perpetually lying. I mean, he just keeps doing every video, lie, 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 lie. He's a gutless, slandering liar. Alright, so this is the stupid paper. And there's no details, of course. So if somebody can find this experiment from the, where it's free, I would appreciate it. And so it was done with an electron microscope. So here's the so all the electrons could still pass. Okay, so this is the sentence. I'll read this paragraph. So I mean, this is done with, it's not even a regular electron microscope. It's one that actually is like an X-ray machine, where it shoots crap through stuff instead of reflecting it. So they're very high intensity electrons. So because they're using such high velocity electrons, it means, by their stupid de Broglie nonsense, that means they're very high frequency photons. That means they have to have a really tiny slit to get any diffraction because they're moving so fast. It means they have a really high frequency. It means you can't see them with a big slit. You can't see any pattern. So they're using it very, very tiny slits. And you can sort of just get the obvious problem. Electrons are bigger than photons. I mean, just logically, they have to be a lot bigger than a photon. And so you're throwing something a lot bigger than a photon through a smaller slit. And, so the words are in here. So I just, you can just see the flaws in this experiment. But the idea is that they block one of the slits with a filter. So it's just something to slow the electrons down and try to ruin the pattern. And of course it ruins the pattern. And somehow they're saying that tells you what slit it went through. Well, of course, it's still, I don't know how it tells you that, because again, they haven't even explained how they do a time exposure with this electron. You can't do a single electron at a time experiment unless you have a time exposure. They haven't even explained how they do that with this particular kind of electron microscope. But anyway, I'll just read. Just reading this paragraph is enough for you, I think, a reasonable person to say this is probably bullshit. All right. Although the electrons, which were shot one by one, something this device doesn't do very well anyway, but they're saying they did that, could still pass through the filtered slit. The filter causes more of the electrons to undergo inelastic scattering rather than elastic scattering. Now, they're not supposed to be scattering. Okay, nowhere in interferometers or in the two-slit experiment does anyone ever use the word scatter. Okay, so it's never a word used. Scatter would be making a mess of the experiment. No one's arguing that an interference pattern is created by scattering. So why is scattering happening? It really shouldn't be. You're just shining electrons through a slit. There's not supposed to be any scatter. All right, as the physicist explained, as the paper writers, I guess, an electron undergoing inelastic scattering is localized at the covered slit. So what does that even mean? It's localized at the covered slit. It means it doesn't go anywhere? It stays there? Is that what localized means? And acts like a spherical wave. So now we have to think about what a spherical wave would be. I guess, it goes this way and this way. The single photon is a wave now. Okay. After passing through the slit. In contrast, the electron passing through the unfiltered slit is more likely to undergo elastic scattering. Scattering with what? But this is the problem. Because they're using these big electrons, tiny slit. I think their scattering is they're hitting the surfaces. They're actually hitting the matter and scattering. Anyway, and act like a cylindrical wave. So I guess that's just doing this or this. So, I don't know. The electron is doing that. There's no evidence electrons can do any of this stuff. There's no evidence that electrons can be polarized, any of this crap. There's no evidence. After passing through that slit, the spherical wave and cylindrical waves do not have any phase correlation. Well, of course they can't have any phase correlation because electrons don't have any phase. They're not being shot at a frequency. There's no phase. Electrons don't have a frequency. So again, they gave they're saying the momentum, the fact that the electron's moving 70 miles an hour, let's say. They're saying that somehow we're going to convert that into a frequency, and then we'll assume it has a phase. None of that stuff exists. An electron cannot have a phase. It's just retarded. Sent one at a time. How do I send one electron at a time and then have an argument about some phase thing? There's no phase to compare it to. There's not two electrons. I can't say the frequency of the two electrons was out of phase when they're sending them one at a time. So none of this makes any sense. And so even if an electron passes through both slits, the two different waves, so again, where did they get the evidence of the two waves that came out cannot create an interference pattern on the wall behind them? So anyway, I mean, it's full of a bunch of nonsense. That paragraph is just, I'll argue that that's the future will know that that was just a pile of garbage. That was just a bunch of gobbledygook the guy just made up. Right, there's nothing real in any of that. None of those things are real. The scattering's not supposed to be happening. Electrons can't be a spherical wave or a whatever the other one was, a cylindrical one, and they can't be out of phase unless you send them at a frequency. They can't have a phase. Anyway, it's like a radio. I mean, you can't send a radio signal unless you put in the frequency into the antenna. If you don't shoot the electrons with a frequency, they can't have a phase. It's just not possible. It's just gibberish. All right. So, but I would love to see the paper, I have to admit. So, and maybe I'll make a video just reading this, but I really I need the paper. Just really have to know how they did this. But it just sounds like absolute crap. And the funny thing is they cut this little tiny, inside electron microscope, and they cut this little slits with an ion beam. And I'm saying, well, why don't you just use the ion beam through the slits and then detect the ions? So none of it makes any sense. If you can aim the ions, can you aim the electrons? Because then you could just aim them through the slits. Just aim them. Shoot one electron through the right slit, then shoot one through the left slit, and then the right slit, then the left slit, and see if you still get the pattern. And then you'll know that you can know what slit it went through. Shit. This planet's just insane. Alright. More people pay attention. Okay, we already did that one. Alright, so could we call the supposed wavelength a ray length? Well, you can't change wavelength into ray length, so that's not going to work. The ray length is measuring how long a sequence of bullets is. So I shoot a bullet 1 a second for 4 seconds. Then the ray length is 4 seconds, and the wavelength is 1 second. So you can't change the two things. So there's still a wavelength between cannonballs, so to speak. But the ray length would be 5 cannonballs is 5 wavelengths. Also, I'm throwing my intensity word out with my last comment. Thank you. Hearing Ken Wheeler use it makes me want to run as far away from it as possible. You are right that we need to be careful when redefining variables in known equations. Yeah, well then they do that with the two slit all over the place. Or we fall into some problems modern quantum physics has. Bold assertions, cherry-picked evidence. Well, that's the big one, cherry-picked evidence. Quote mining evidence, same argument, and it's all over the place. Every single image, essentially, of single-slit diffraction or single-slit interference, almost every single one of them is a cherry-picked distortion of reality where they pretend, oh, there's only 3 little bars. It's just such a lie. Experiments modeling and an overclass of talking heads that ignore available basic explanations of things in favor of tired esoteric explanations. Well, obviously their preference is for the silly stuff, and that's how I would put it. But you know, the sillier the better, almost. I mean, the whole idea of creating this whole multiverse theory to explain the two-slit experiment. I mean, here they are creating new universes to explain an on-off pattern. I mean, it just seems ridiculous the lengths they'll go to. I mean, even dark matter is just such an obvious one. I mean, you're just sitting there saying, are you that desperate? I mean, isn't this as invisible man as you can get? Oh, it's invisible in every respect except it does the one thing we want it to do, to fix our math. I mean, it just sounds like so preposterous. I mean, it's such a desperate creation. I've yet to have a physics teacher do well in instructing beyond something simple, let's say, like projectile motion or friction. Yeah, well, they don't even do friction very well. Friction's a little complicated, but anyway, yeah, you know, look, obviously some of that Newtonian stuff is simple enough that you can get it. Oh yeah, I get the parabola, I get this, yeah, that's it. This was really why I like your channel in particular. You strip out the jargon and your metaphors and criticisms are spot on in many cases. Well, I'm just saying there's so much of it that I'm really irritated that they never taught it the right way. And for example, the resident thing, right? I mean, people always just say, oh, well, when it's on residence, and you never really get to understand what that means. And what it means is really, you know, from what I've figured out, is that's where they should be using the words constructive and destructive interference, because that's where it really counts, is that residence just means there's a majority movement, one that the system itself is already involved in. It's like it already has a Brownian motion like this. And so when you're adding energy, if you add more on resonance, that is, your energy has a frequency that balances well with the frequency that it's already moving, then that energy will be added to the system's energy. But if you don't, so if you're swinging a pendulum, it's like the idea is you are pushing a kid on a swing. You keep pushing at the right time. You don't push when the swing's pushing back at you. You wait till it stops, and then you push. You wait till it stops, and then you push. If you push when the thing's coming at you, then you destroy the energy. But if you push at the right time, you add to the system's stored energy, the trapped energy, the energy that just keeps going back and forth in the system. And that was a huge difference. I mean, the word didn't mean anything to me a year ago. And now it means something because I understand what's really happening. Is it's just a way of storing energy. It's a way of adding it so you store it so it stays in the system. It keeps reflecting. It traps it. Alright. It seems like quantum physics is drowning out all of the information of classical physics. Well, it's pretending that it's undoing classical physics, which it's not. I mean, they're pretending they're undoing Newton, or they're improving Newton, or some other kind of crap, and none of that's happening. None of Newton's shit is broken by them. They aren't redoing anything in any magical way at all, which is a terrible thing to see, as you need a serious basis in classical physics at most colleges before you even touch quantum. Well, the classic is the game. The quantum is pretty much all bullshit. The kids and youth going into physics today are definitely putting the cart, quantum, before the horse, classical. Well, they're clearly finding out the punchline of quantum too soon, before they've gotten a feel for how physical the world really is. Anyway, James, by doing a bad job, if somebody who could do a worse job to get a job. Oh yeah, so I'm just making the point that you know, they're opening the door to all the hacks and the tinfoil hatters and the flat earthers by being such poor examples of good science. Alright, I don't know if this guy's worth reading. This is always a bit crazy. Magnetic centrifugal discharge. There's no such thing. satirical, cynical way of saying the black side absorbs the light and emits infrared, which agitates the partial vacuum, causing convection. So I guess he's talking about the vein thing. Works just fine with all black veins. Well, yeah, but then you have to direct the light to one side or the other. So yeah, it'll work either way if you force one side to get exposed to more energy than the other side. Yeah, it'll spin that way. But that doesn't get really to the physics of it. It works well with white veins and black light. When you think about it, do you want to deprive the industry of its school fees? I don't know what that means. Seriously, both sides undergo reflection. It's a really good instrument. I don't know. Clearly, it doesn't do what people think it's doing, though. So it can confuse people if they don't understand that it's more complicated than what it looks like. Anyway, hello, Gary. Hope you're doing well. I don't know. You can hope. During your description of Piro, you mentioned that, I'm paraphrasing, no experiment could even theoretically be done on a single electron without altering its trajectory. I'm just saying rationally, the only way we detect things is by hitting them with something. There's no way to brush up against them. If you put a field on an electron, you're going to disturb it. They'd have to be disturbed, and then we have to detect the disturbance. You know, it's like, I don't know, well, a stupid analogy came to mind. I mean, you blow somebody's head off with a shotgun, and we can tell you did it because blood splatters on the wall. You know, there has to be a, you know, it seems reasonable that you would need an interaction of some kind to register the electron. Right. Photons, you can't partially interact with a photon, so you're out of the game with photons. There's just no way to have a partial. It's a whole interaction or no interaction. Electrons, you have some hope, but you have to be very subtle because they react. Photons are what's controlling where they move. So you have to hit them with very few photons. But is there an experiment that could be cited demonstrating that claim? Well, what claim do you need demonstrated? I have to prove the non-existence of no evidence, or I have to prove there's no evidence. I don't know. That's all I can do. I mean, there's no way I can't. How do I prove that you can't do something you can't do? Like, I don't know. You can't get energy out of a dead battery. I mean, how do I prove it except pointing out, well, there's no example of getting energy out of a dead battery. I don't know how else I prove it. It's by pointing out there's no evidence of you being able to do it. So I'm just saying, theoretically, as we understand these things, there's no evidence that electrons have any special properties beyond being affected by photons. You know, it's the nature of what charge is reflecting photons. Whoa, monster. I don't know if I want to read all this. Yeah, wow. Alright, so this is more for the James McGinn guy. Wow. Wow, that's a big pile of stuff. Let's see what the end is. P.S. I do agree on this point, though, with James after my research today, that the contribution of water is probably 1,000 to 1,000,000 times more important to the equilibrium temperature than CO2. I think that's just an insane statement, frankly. 1,000 to 1,000,000 times? It's just, I'm sorry, that's just crazy talk. Mostly due to its proximity to humans, coasts, and lakes. I don't know how you think that has anything to do with it. Its absorption spectrum fairly... So again, I guess you just don't get it. Greenhouses work by creating a surface. And see, the James McGinn guy, I do have his comment up. I guess I'll read these two in a separate video. I don't know why. I mean, I don't see this flat Earth CO2 denial is just that bad. It's just flat Earth crap, and you're almost like, why am I wasting my time with one individual who's insane and has a huge bigotry against CO2 for some reason? A huge bias, an insane bias. Well, he made this stupid point that there's no layer of CO2. There doesn't have to be. One atom can be here, one atom can be here, one atom can be here, one atom can be here. They can be at all different heights in the atmosphere. It's still a film from the sun's point of view. It still blocks. I could take a black piece of paper and break it into, I have a black piece of paper this big. I could break it into little pieces and spread it over this big. It's still going to block just as much light. Exactly the same amount of light is going to get blocked. So the CO2 can be in any, it can be, I can take the little, I put a black piece here, I can put a black piece, I can put them all different locations in the 3 miles of atmosphere that's important. And it doesn't matter, it's still a layer, you idiot. So it's like you have to make all these kind of idiotic arguments. It doesn't have to be all at the same altitude. The layer is in the fact that it exists in the atmosphere. Fucking idiots. Alright, anyway, mostly due to the proximity to abundance. Over 7% of the Earth's water and less than 1% of the atmosphere is CO2. Again, the CO2, the molecule, the atom, the glass on a greenhouse is not getting hot. Alright, so it's not getting hot, you idiot. It doesn't store the heat. It doesn't store the energy. The stuff inside the greenhouse, on the other side of the glass, is where the energy is converted into a form that bounces off the glass more readily. So it goes through the glass easy, and then has a real hard time getting back out because it's the wrong frickin' frequency. What don't you understand about the greenhouse effect? So you wrote all this crap to say something this stupid in the end? Well, how unfortunate. Alright, so anyway, but you, James, are the one that claims CO2 had no effect. Well, you just said it's 1,000 to 1,000,000 times. You just said water is 1,000 to 1,000,000 times more important. Well, frankly, if CO2 has that little effect, I would agree with James then. Alright, I would say, who cares about CO2? It's irrelevant. I mean, it's just idiotic. We're talking about what gases or what molecules in the atmosphere create like the glass or plastic layer of a greenhouse. Which molecules do this thing where they let frequency in, one kind of frequency gets through the molecule really easy, and other frequencies don't. So they block one form of energy more readily and they transmit another form more readily. That's a greenhouse gas by definition. That's the thing it does. That's the greenhouse effect. Damn. This explanation does ignore things like ocean acidification and other byproducts. Just amazing crap, such as potential changes in weather, pollution, ice caps, etc. But as far as climate, water seems king. Well, I'm sorry, it's not the only gas, okay? It's not the only vapor. It's not the only thing in the atmosphere that is creating this transmission layer problem. And it's a transmission layer problem. The light comes in at a high frequency. The surface of the Earth converts it into a low frequency. That's the effect you have to deal with. I can't believe he wrote all this crap. Alright, well, I'll read it some other day. It's not on the subject of my theory. Again, see, this is what's so evil about these people with their own agenda. Because this, he rewrites his little comments on my videos, and they're really not relevant. And he has this one subject that he's just focused on, his stupid love for water molecules, and his desire to somehow pretend human beings haven't changed the atmosphere. Stupid as fuck. Well, yeah, we just put a bunch of carbon back into the available atmosphere. Let's just pretend it had no consequence. It's retarded. Have you seen this video? Yes. Okay, so this is a good video. So I'll put a link below to this channel just for the Tesla nuts. Okay, because she just says basically everything I said. Okay, in my video about the fact that Tesla wasn't all that. Okay, he did some good stuff, but he just didn't invent AC current. He didn't invent the AC motor. He didn't invent anything really. He just did modifications to things, and some of them were really great modifications, but he didn't really change anything. Tesla was so superfluous to our progress. There was absolutely, his theories were essentially crazy. They'll never materialize into anything that matters. And it's just a lie to pretend that if Tesla didn't show up, if I could remove Tesla from Earth history, that somehow we would be one day behind in progress. Because we wouldn't. Because all his theoretical knowledge was crap. And all he did was, like I said, a few little inventions. Like I said, he didn't make AC motors. He just made one version of an AC motor. We had other motors, and they worked. And we would have got along just fine without Teslas if we had to wait another 10 years. And the joke is, though, that Tesla even admits that another guy came up with exactly the same idea as his, and she has the quote where Tesla's actually saying how remarkable it is that that other guy invented the same thing I did. So we would have had it anyway. Amazing. But anyway, the Tesla nuts. So anyway, I'll link to that channel. Anyone who wants good information from the best instructor, I love this asshole's comment. I mean, this is really funny. I have ever known is a kind of humorous Nobel Prize winner. Look at just about anything you find on YouTube by searching Richard Feynman. So again, yes, Richard Feynman's an interesting character, but frankly, his physics was also fucking insane. I mean, he's the one that started doing this whole borrowing from the vacuum crap. Let's pretend, we can make one electron move through time and be responsible for every event that ever happened in the universe. I mean, it's just silly crap. And they're just mathematical tricks. Feynman was, and again, Feynman, the only thing that's outstanding about Feynman is basically his preposterous arrogance, where he basically said, I couldn't figure out the right answer, so here, just have this shitty answer instead. That's all it is. And because I can't figure it out, you won't be able to either. So you're hopeless. You have to accept the shitty answer because nobody will ever do better. Because I was the smartest man who ever lived in the universe. And if I can't figure it out, nobody can. That's essentially all he was saying. You won't be disappointed. No, I mean, you won't, like I said, I find him interesting to watch. But some of his physics is crap. You will be enlightened and actually entertained. As I'm pointing out, you're going to be deceived, okay, and misinformed. Feynman never talks down to anyone, which is just so funny that this asshole can't figure out what do you think he's doing when he's saying, well, you can come up with some other ideas, but you'll fail. I mean, that's pretty much putting you down. Oh, YouTube is a wonderful selection of his writings and lectures. Well, I don't know if his writings are on YouTube, but whatever. So anyway, I've just posted half of the Feynman is the Dumbass of the Week award winner. Anyway. The climate of science, if you can call it that, is quite intimidating. There is an overlap in science and media with social hierarchy, intelligence, and social status. Well, I don't know if it has anything... Hierarchy is a fine word. I don't think it has anything to do with being intelligent, because frankly, these people... look, they just gave a Nobel Prize to that stupid idiot with the stupid gravitational wave thing. And if you watch the movie he was the main scientific consultant on, even directly a writer on, it's the worst movie explaining the physics of gravity ever made. It's so clueless. And social status. Why do you think that so many intelligent people are quiet about the lies in mainstream science? Well, again, I think they're clueless. That's why. I just don't think they're intelligent people, frankly. Okay, they learn some math, but I don't think they're all that intelligent. People say it's the money. It's the ego stuff, clearly for professors. However, I'm sure that there are lots of people in science who are involved in quantum physics out of curiosity and are not totally focused on funding. Well, that girl who's now just going to do YouTube videos, who's going to get her doctorate, but quit because YouTube's more fun. She got into physics because of the stupid Dr. Quantum video. I mean, a silly propaganda video. I find this quandary peculiar. The idea verges on conspiratorial. Well, again, I don't think it does verge on a conspiracy. Human beings have been stupid fuckers for a long time. But frankly, like I said, that you could even go back to the Greeks and go back 2,000 years and say, yeah, people had an obligation to back up what they said. And nobody has to back up anything. Somehow we have lost the idea of the public soapbox and having to defend what you say and being tested. No one's tested anymore. I mean, Newton was even tested. People had to be tested. No one's tested. Everything's just a club, and the club has a vote of some kind, and then the club basically says, okay, we're going to go with that crap. That's what it seems to be. But they just seem so uninterested in stepping any little line, any tiny bit out of line. So they all have to, they all accept the jargon, wave particle duality. They all just accept the jargon. Even the, there's a few out there, physicists, who aren't too comfortable with this whole invention of dark matter, but there's not nearly enough saying, that's a really weak, it seems a little desperate. Anyway, proposed dissection experiments you made are very interesting. So I think that's the two slit stuff. Yeah, I mean, I really am looking around at everything I have here, and I'm saying, do I have anything like chrome that has a square angle on it? I had a pyramid piece of glass, and I don't know where I'm moving, so I had to pack it, and I don't know where I put it. But maybe I can find that, because even though it's only it's not a complete reflection, it would be enough of a reflection to get through the slits. So even a square piece of glass would work, I think. But I'd rather have something silvered. But anyway, because I think it's a really good idea is to just shoot two different beams into the slits. Anyway. So how today? I'll allow a little pontificating. Good word while we're in the honeymoon period. Yeah, like as I guessed, the honeymoon didn't last very long. But he finally did make a video just telling the truth that, Pierrot's conversation is always going to be bent back to flakery. So he used that word, which I thought was good. And this crap that he can't seem to understand what the actual controversy is about. He's making these direct accusations, calling me a liar, saying I've denied some real science and all this shit. It is terribly offensive. I mean, he has no right to say I did any of that shit when I didn't do it, and he can't even get what the argument is about. I mean. Again, I mean, Huxley says which way, he doesn't do which way, then he doesn't search for which way, and then he says, well, I sent you the, I'm going to forget the term again, the quantum eraser experiment. How is quantum eraser experiment a which way experiment? In the traditional sense of detecting something. It's just so stupid. Alright, James McGinn, so his little irony statement, I guess. It's exasperating talking to people who lie. So I haven't blocked you yet, but you're going to get it. Okay? I haven't lied about anything, you stupid liar. So it's just, I disagree with you. I point out why I understand CO2 to be a greenhouse gas and how I understand it to work. And you say I'm not allowed to say that without you calling me a liar? I mean, fuck you. You don't have a right to call me a liar. I didn't lie about anything, asshole. Pretending to understand what they don't. Huh? I mean, so, again, I won't block you yet, but you're on the verge of it. I mean, you're just rude. You post 10 comments on one video. You can't show any respect or courtesy here. I mean, why should I put up with that crap? Where did I lie about you? Or where did I lie about what a piece of evidence or some other thing? Where did I make what statement of mine was a lie, asshole? I don't agree with you. I'm allowed to do that, not agree. He obviously understands the points being raised and the arguments being made, surely. No, he doesn't. He surely doesn't understand. Look, again, he doesn't pay any attention. I mean, I've pointed this out about Pirro so many times. He just barely hears anything people say. He barely reads what they write. He just glosses over something, looks for a blanket evidence, find because. Okay, that's what he sees. So he goes, blanket evidence. Oh, he has a conspiracy that something's on fire and you have to put blankets on it to put the fire out. You know, he just comes up with some crap out of the little half sentences he's constructed. He is so invested in false claims and clinging to his comfort blanket. I think the main reason he avoided this subject was simply because he was unable to discover any data or true evidence. Again, no, I think he really does. He's just a religious devotee, and they always pull out like, well, I have a picture of a brontosaurus footprint on top of a human footprint. You know, it's the same fake piece of evidence that's been debunked 45 years ago. And they just keep showing it. So I'm sure in conversations, Pirro's probably still saying, parameciums have been proven to learn. You know, even though I pointed out how, that didn't happen. Because he is like trying to find a rocking horse shit. Well, I don't know if I put it that way, but... Alright, your opening description of atoms being shot through an evacuated chamber was an excellent description. That was on the video about something. Yeah, I don't really remember. I don't know that's how the history of the experiment went. Atoms being shot through an evacuated chamber. Yeah, well, I'm not sure what specifically what video that is, so I'm not exactly sure. But clearly it has to be understood. There's a history to all this stuff, and physicists like to lie about the history. That's what I have learned. There's lots of... Again, the Young experiment is just so obvious. It was such a it was just such a weak plagiarization of Newton's experiments. It was totally meaningless. At around 36 minutes in your described wave words used by Pirro, and then described them in terms of particle words. Yeah, we just understand that when they... See, Pirro thinks of diffraction, refraction, and the other one, I can't remember. But anyway, the three. And they're all just forms of deflection, right? They're all just a change in direction. But yeah, he thinks they're only capable of being described by wave mechanics, that something can't refract for some other mechanical reason than a wave function. It's just amazing that they've claimed they own those words, that those are wave words, when no, they're just describing a kind of deflection that happens, you know, internal or external. You know, there's certain rules for when you use one word versus another word. I mean, you know, refraction is obviously a word you use for when it's a deflection that's happening in a material. Reflection is when it's coming into the same material and out of the same material. You know, certain things like that. But he thinks they're all wave concepts, that they aren't just descriptions of different kinds of deflections. Anyway. Thank you for this video. I have my own views on the universe being a terrasact with a decocylinder. Who cares? Ken believes in Marco Robbins' toroidal field. What's your view on Marco Rudens? I'm sure I hate him passionately. So whatever. Maybe I'll look it up someday, but I just couldn't. Again, that's not my agenda. Sorry. I do the Ken Wheeler videos because he's wrong, he's arrogant, he's obnoxious, he's disgusting, and he has a huge following just listening to absolute nonsense. And he lies, and it's terrible. He shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Somebody should call him out. But it's really not my agenda. I mean, defeating Ken Wheeler is aside. You know, my real thing. I'm after the conventionals, not the tinfoil hatters. Just to be perfectly clear, well, I don't know if we'll be able to do that. What you're saying is that you have been unable to turn up any evidence that the single photodetector, described as a necessary component of the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment, really exists in reality. See, this is what I was saying. So here's another person pointing out this quantum eraser experiment as if this is a which way thing, and it's not a which way thing. You think that polarizing filters just detect polarization. Well, if you really thought about it, I think you could understand that they don't just detect polarization, they impose polarization. They change polarization. So they're a filter they're a measuring device that's clearly interfering. Anyway, so again, the detection is just the idea of, as Feynman described it, you shoot something at it to see where it is, see if it's there or not. If you get a reflection, then it's there. If you get no reflection, it's not there. It's a simple principle. This doesn't have anything to do with eraser experiments. After thoroughly searching for patents or design specifications. So again, why would I do any of that crap? Since back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they've been claiming, you can find citations to detecting which slit a photon or an electron went through, and clearly it wasn't an experiment that was ever done. I don't know what else to say. Sorry to ask for this recap, but time doesn't permit me to watch all your content. I haven't been able to follow this recent thread. Well, then there's really no point in commenting on it. I'm sorry, but that's just the rules. If you are correct about this experiment being impracticable, well, that's a huge discovery. Well, I think it's just evidence, again, that this quantum theory is a weak theory. You don't make up fake experiments if you have a strong theory. You make up fake experiments if your theory needs to be supported by it. You have to make the mystery more mysterious. So I'm just saying that's all this is for. You don't pretend to describe an experiment you didn't do, unless you need to somehow reinforce the idea that Heisenberg is right, Heisenberg is right. And so you're creating fake evidence to demonstrate that Heisenberg is right. But it's completely fake evidence. There's nothing else you can say. It's fake. You never proved he was right. And even if you did the experiment and you got the results, it wouldn't prove it. But I'm just saying the fact that they are saying it when they never did it is just pointing out how this is not good science. Good scientists don't do that. They don't tell you fake stories about what primitive man did, They're not supposed to do that. Alright, Theora-apocalypse is delusional, and everything he purports to understand, which appears to be everything, is BS, flows like a tap, devoid of anything resembling proof or principle. Yeah, well, even his language is just impossible. There's no, his verbiage has no definition. The language is invented. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's just counter space. It just counter space. Well, what the fuck how can you possibly even come up with a notion of saying something like counter nothing? I mean, it's just retarded. And spewed as fact to cloak the delusional infeasibility. The delusion whatever. The subject here is a simple example of the creation of electric potential in a conductor that's chopping through the magnetic field. I don't know if that makes any sense either. It's how electricity is generated after all. Well, I don't, it's generated because the field is energy, and the energy it hits the stuff in the conductor, and it energizes the atoms, and the atoms, when energized, pass the energy on to each other, and so that becomes an electric current. Alright, and when there's a flow of electric current, there's a magnetic field produced opposing that which creates it. Well, it's not. Its job isn't to oppose it. It's just that it's a reflection. It reflects what you're throwing at it. And if you reflect what you or somebody's throwing at you, if you're reflecting it, and they're going to reflect what you threw at them, well, that's going to end up being a repulsion. So it's not opposing it. It just happens to be creating the same thing back, which is, you know, creating a charge problem because you're throwing, you know, north force at north force and south force at north, and so that's basically saying electron against electron or proton against proton. You can't do that. They're repulsive. But it's not like it's trying to stop something. This is Lenz's law, established in 1834. Well, again, it's not a very well written law. I'm just saying. It doesn't get to the point, and the point is, you're getting a reflection of the force. You throw it at it, it reflects back at you. So you're getting back what you throw. And so as you throw a new knife, I throw a knife, you throw it back at me. Then I throw that knife back at you, but I throw another knife. And it's just you know, you just keep increasing the number of knives. A good example of magnetic damping manifested by a rotating brass gyroscope is given here. Yes, the gyroscope argument is too obvious. So, I mean, even in Ken Willer's videos, he keeps saying, it's not Lenz's law, it's not Lenz. Well, of course it is. It's you know, but it's just obvious. No Ken Apollopolis gobbledygook required. Yeah, well, clearly, though, to understand his gyroscope experiments, especially the ones on the side of the magnet, you really have to understand that's where the dipole of the magnet is felt, because now the south part of the magnet is actually hitting the gyroscope. Where if you keep the gyroscope on just the north end and don't expose it to the south end, none of the south energy can get to the gyroscope, then it's a monopole, and it can be perfectly comfortable. The gyroscope doesn't care. So when you have a dipole, you're going to end up in trouble. Alright, so anyway, magnetically. Dielectricity-wise. Dielectricity. See, it does infect you. Dielectricity-wise. No. Diamagnetic. Oh, damn, that's really annoying. Oh, Ken Wheeler verbs stuck in my head. So anyway, I think that's enough of a video. Sorry, I'm a bit tired, so might not have been as articulate as necessary. Couldn't remember. Quantum eraser, quantum eraser. So which way means quantum eraser? I mean, just, you know, whatever. You know, hopeless. So I think that's it. I mean, I could, you know, I probably should go back and just play the little, I mean, there were little Piro videos, 3-minute videos. There were just little shots that he threw in there where he lied about what I had said again. And it's just so irritating that he gets away with this, just lying. Disgusting. So anyway. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. I mean, you know, he's got a 4-hour video with Barklord, but it's just their woo-wee philosophy stuff, so I won't, I might do a video, but I'll post it elsewhere. But I'm not going to watch 4 hours of babble. But anyway, so that's it, I guess. I don't think Hofladay's made any other videos. Oh, well, yeah, Piro keeps saying this color is abstract, which is just stupid. The correlation we have, as we detect frequencies, and our brain generalizes some of it. You know, it's like if it's in a certain range, you know, like 720 nanometers to 735 nanometers, we can't tell the difference between any of those, you know, those gradations. So, but we're basically just detecting a frequency. Our eye is detecting frequencies, and that's all it's doing. And it's just assigning the frequency to what we call a color. Well, it's just, it has to identify it. I mean, it's not going to make it, it's not going to make the frequency plaid. It's not going to make the frequency like striped lines wouldn't work. You know, it could grayscale everything, you know, but grayscale wouldn't provide as much information. You know, you can get a lot more information if you can make the certain grayscale, certain refinements much brighter. So if you emphasize certain things, so color creates emphasis. And emphasis was really important in our world in the sense it's really important to see the real, see if we grayscaled it, blood would look the same as grass, you know? And it would just be about how much light was coming off of a surface rather than what form of stuff. So it's really important that we know what blood is red, you know, and it's important it can identify the blood. You know, the difference between bleeding and having water on your leg or something, or some other goo. You know, tree sap. It's important to know, oh, I know I'm bleeding, it's not tree sap. So color is just an evolutionary advantage to assigning it that. But I'm just saying the representation is not distorted by the, the value added. So our brain adds a little value to the concept of frequency that recognizes there are important colors and unimportant colors. And so it colorizes everything, even the unimportant, because it needs to colorize the important. So it's adding a little value, but none of the value is inaccurate. So you really don't call it abstract. We always see red as red. We always see blue as blue. Our brain doesn't make, like one day blue things are red and then the red things are green. They're not changing colors. So to call color an abstraction is to sort of deny that our brain is attempting to accurately represent its real, a real property it has. And there's a real property difference between blood and tree sap. So our brain's not doing anything to break our understanding, it's enhancing our understanding. And most abstractions tend to be something distorting a reality, not preserving a reality, not recognizing more truth. So our vision of color is a way of seeing more truth about color rather than less truth. Where abstractions can end up just being distortions, and they just make, you know, like a mirage in the desert. They could just fool you. They're not giving you more information. They're giving you fake information. But anyway, he's too stupid to figure out any of this stuff. Idiot. So anyway, until next time and such. I really do hate most of you. I mean, it's just a fact. You know, most of you people suck. You're just so belligerently fucking cement-headed.